As we all know, Edge is no longer just a CDN layer. It is becoming a full application platform, thanks to Akamai. And with AI workloads pushing compute closer to users, the old models of serverless and containers are starting to show their limits. Akamai's acquisition of Fermyon signals a major shift, bringing WebAssembly-based serverless to global edge network. The goal is faster startup times, lower cost, and a far more secure environment for new generation apps and AI inferencing. And joining me today to discuss this acquisition and how the world will look like are once again Ari Weil, VP of Product Marketing at Akamai, and Matt Butcher, CEO and co-founder of Fermyon, and now VP of Product at Akamai, to talk about why this deal matters for developers and how it changes the edge landscape. Matt, we just saw each other at KubeCon. I've been covering Fermyon for a long time. So this acquisition is really important, not just for these two companies, but the larger ecosystem as well. Before we get started, just for the sake of our viewers, Matt, quickly remind them what is Fermyon, your entire history with WebAssembly, Helm. We talk about Helm 4 also at KubeCon, and then we'll see how it fits into Akamai, and then we'll talk to Ari. So let's hear from you, Matt, quickly.
Yeah, I can start with Helm since that's the oldest. My part in the Kubernetes ecosystem was as one of the original creator of Helm, the package manager for Kubernetes. My career has been very steeped in cloud technologies. I worked on OpenStack long ago, got really interested in Docker when it emerged, then was very, very early in Kubernetes, started working on that very early, and of course went on to create Helm. And the cloud native ecosystem has been so great, right, in transforming the way we looked at different kinds of workloads. But one of the pieces that a group of us felt was missing was a really good compute platform to be able to run serverless style workloads. Now, serverless style workload is one where there is no server running all the time, right? A request comes in, a process starts up, handles that request, returns a response, and shuts back down again. And Docker is a great platform for running long-running daemon-style processes like databases and API servers. But we felt like the kind of serverless workloads that had emerged originally through Amazon Lambda and then started to pick up more momentum on the edge with things like Akamai Edge Workers, those style of workloads really needed a specialized compute layer. And so 10 of us who had worked together at Microsoft all left on the same day about 4.5 years ago to start Fermyon with this idea of building the next wave of serverless computing, or the next kind of cloud compute engine. So for 4 years, we started with an open source developer tool called Spin that's now part of CNCF alongside Kubernetes. After that, we started building a Kubernetes runtime called SpinCube. And then we realized that really the true power in this style of workload would emerge only if we could get the workload close to end users. In other words, it's really cool to be able to run a serverless function and cold start in under half a millisecond. But if we can't get to that point on the network where we would be able to reach users quickly, then it doesn't matter how fast we can run, right? If you get 300 milliseconds of network delay, a half a millisecond of cold start time doesn't raise anybody's eyebrows. And that's what led us into this partnership about a year and some ago with Akamai to build Fermyon WASM functions. And I think that's probably a good place to start this story. We created Fermyon WASM functions, a platform that can run all along Akamai's network. We like to say it's the fastest serverless runtime running on the world's most distributed platform.
Excellent. Thank you for that journey. Now, Ari, we can talk about technologies whole day, but the whole idea of these technologies to actually help customers. Can you talk about, from Akamai's customers' perspective, what gaps were enterprises running into that made Fermyon's WebAssembly, your partnership, fast the right solution, which eventually led to this acquisition? How is it going to actually make developers feel with this acquisition part of Akamai?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for us, as we've been engaging with our customers across a number of different verticals, but certainly when we look at commerce, manufacturing, travel, and a lot of our publishing customers, there's this pronounced need to perform edge computing. And there has been for years. Akamai has been evolving how we do that to meet the needs of our customers. We used to do it with things like Edge Java. We developed a metadata language. We started to push out, an XML-like ability to configure the network to do what you needed to. And eventually we created specific products, cloudlets, and then a serverless framework or a platform that we called Edge Workers. And we had the ability to do lightweight serverless functions for our customers, increasingly for the way that they were developing their web applications, which was a lot of front end code and things that we could manage with state light or stateless serverless functions. What we found was, though, developers use a number of different languages. Languages evolve very quickly. We need something where they can code in the language of their choice and then consider not just having really ephemeral or lightweight processing abilities, but increasingly have edge distributed applications. And that application need really required us to find somebody like a Fermyon that we could partner with because, as Matt said, Akamai is all about distribution and low latency. We needed to find a partner as well that could create an environment that would allow for a stateful application that could be developed easily, would start up instantly, and that could be a fast runtime environment for them, regardless of how they decided to write their code. And so it was sort of a match made in heaven, so to speak. When we found the Fermyon team, our team started to get excited as well about Spin and that framework, the engagement with a larger community and what that could mean for us to actually start to develop a way that people could consider this architecture going forward. And then as we brought, Matt and the team to a lot of Akamai's customers together, we found that, they were having a similar reaction. They had the same beliefs. And the biggest thing that was going to hold us back in realizing some of the potential that we saw was the fact that we weren't one company. And that's why it just seemed like such a natural thing that we integrate into the platform first to really prove the value to our customers, but then find that there was a pronounced need to have this as part of the platform and integrated together with that continuum of compute that we have now with full infrastructure leading to edge computing and now stateful distributed applications with the Fermyon team. So it really was a great journey, but the customers led us through it.
Very true. And when I was reading the announcement, it highlights a deep integration between Fermion's edge function and Akamai's performance. And of course, you folks are known for security stack. If you look at developers, what does that integration actually look like? What are the things that become simpler when you go to cloud native? Things become complicated also very quickly. And what are the things that become even more powerful compared to building edge functions today?
I think one of the things we targeted from the first days of Fermyon was building a really good developer experience. We use kind of a user story driven way of doing product development. And our core user story for the entire first year that we were a company was, as a developer, I can go from blinking cursor to deployed application in 2 minutes or less. We just wanted to make that initial developer experience so smooth that nobody had hiccups getting their first Hello World app going, and they were immediately moving on to, oh, I get how this works. What can I build with it? Right? What can I use this for to solve real problems for me? And that's something that we've worked really hard to stay true to. And I'm really excited that as a good, strong developer experience, that's something we have to bring forward with us into Akamai. But there's the second half of this is that Akamai has been building services for a long time. When they acquired Linode, they gained this whole IaaS layer that includes object storage and compute and container runtimes. They've built services on the security side to be able to do bot protection. They've built services. The longest running services, right, are the CDN services. And then more recently launching into the AI service arena. All of these things are going to be services that are easily attached to these Fermyon WASM functions. And together, we're going to be able to build these kind of deep layers of integration that make it so easy for developers to build this, that they're no longer building small enabling chunks anymore. Now they're building full-on edge native applications that can take advantage of high-speed, high-performance AI inferencing, that can store results in a full relational database, that can work with the CDN to accelerate content delivery. So we're really excited that we've gone from, my team's a compute nerd team, right? We're really good at compute. All these other services are new to us. And the fact that we will land in an environment where we can just wire all these up and immediately reap the benefits of Akamai's development since the 90s is just so exciting to us.
Yeah, and I think to add on top of that, the thing that we're excited about to bring security to this as well is increasingly we've wanted security to be more of an integral part of how you design and develop, not just, ultimately secure a deployed application. And so what we've been working on for integration on our platform has been the ability to start with discovery as you're building if you have the product. So we can do continuous discovery of within the domains that we're managing for you. What APIs have you created? Are they protected? What users can get access? What data can they access? Apply firewall rules based on the traffic that's coming to you in a very lightweight set of information that you can provide us for how to configure it. But increasingly, we want effortless, seamless security that works with the developer, not something where the developer has to go in and fix everything that a firewall rule or an API security policy or a bot management, control might have broken for the application, either because we're slowing things down and just, maybe creating a condition that the developer never coded for, never expected, or because we're wholesale blocking access between microservices because we don't understand what they're for. And so for us, it's going to be really important for developers moving forward to have a platform that can do that discovery, that can apply not necessarily a rule and deny mode, but at least something that's been configured for the environment and the workload that you have, and then provide you with that ongoing testing that's integrated and observability so that you can decide based on what I see happening in my app, should I apply this policy that Akamai is already recommending for me, yes or no? And as we realize the full vision, as we really build upon the agentic capability that we're researching now, that becomes something where SOC operations become a lot more of a conversational basic operations of, do you want to approve this? What is the risk profile? Do I adjust it in this instance? With enough data and intelligence for you to get really into the insight that you need to create a more secure application experience. And we're hoping that that will create more hardened, more resilient applications as we scale, because we're building it in a way where we can do a lot of that observability and posture management in a cloud agnostic fashion. We really do feel like, as part of enabling this capability for developers, it's got to keep as open as possible and accommodate multi-cloud from the very beginning.
Very well said. And since we are talking about the capabilities for developers there, the fact is that there are limits of traditional serverless or container platform, especially at the edge. Now, with this Fermyon Wasm Foss is paired with Akamai's massive global footprint, what new capabilities will it open up, especially for real-time applications and emerging AI workloads that we cannot even fathom today?
I think there's sort of like an immediate and a longer term answer to that. And the immediate one is, one of the things we're very excited about is Akamai's launch earlier this year of the or late last year, I think, of the managed container services platform, which is actually a way to start deploying our applications through core regions all the way out to edge pops on into, eventually 4,000 or more different individual locations around the globe. So this enables a developer to deploy once and have an application distributed globally, right? And that's one of those exciting things that unlocks right away and that we'll start working on right away. And we're very excited about that. AI inferencing is another one where, to this point, there's always been sort of some ambiguity about how developers were going to engage with AI, particularly on the inferencing side, to be able to build real world applications and to get past that sort of early paradigm where LLMs are used for chat, right? LLMs can be used for so much more. The ability to run those workloads on the edge, optimize the inferencing for that level of performance, and then deliver very quick responses is going to unlock a new class of edge applications. Looking longer term, what's really exciting about using WebAssembly as a base technology is that it's so portable and so easy to break down into components that I think what we're going to see is a real emergence of a new style of writing applications that allows the application to sort of locate where it makes the most sense, right? How do we get this piece of code to execute very close to the database where there's all this data, and this other piece of the application to execute as close to the user as possible and optimize the relationship between those two? And WebAssembly has this unique component model that's going to unlock that level of capability. And once we can run all of this inside of the Akamai network, and again, take advantage of this wealth of services that are already there, I think we're going to open up the opportunity for developers to actually write a new class of edge native applications.
You and I have talked a lot about a lot of use cases, some of the most challenging real-time use cases, whether sports. How will it help Akamai's existing customers who are already excited about this partnership?
I mean, as Matt was saying, what we've had a lot of interest in is, how am I going to add true AI to my applications. Whereas before, maybe I've been adding a generative interface, and I shouldn't say true AI, like up until now it hasn't been. But how can I go from a generative AI chat-based interface to something where it's actually going to be providing me with something truly personalized, where it provides a better user experience, or it optimizes something like my supply chain, or it helps me to eliminate things like fraud from my environment. We're solving bigger problems for some of our organizations now than, delivering things across a network. We're really thinking about application architectures with them. And that's where the developer piece was always a challenge in certain circles because it was, I want to code in this language. Do you have a way to accommodate me? And when our answer was no, it's really a challenge to suggest how we would create a translation layer because that you start to talk about complications and things that to a developer just don't feel right. And so now where we get really excited is Matt and the team have such a great way to engage with customers, and the developer advocate that's working with them and in the Fermyon community right now is so great at going in and assessing a customer problem, recommending or guiding through a solution for it, and then helping on the engineering side of things for us to understand, do we need a new product feature? Is there a new capability? Do we need to automate something on the platform to improve that developer experience? So some of the places that we've seen real lean in here have been in areas like optimizing for GEO optimization on my website and how I need to start moving from individual, pieces of my application being assembled at the edge so that I can do fast websites for website crawlers and individuals to how do I fully render my application on the server side so that I can create more of that a richer experience for my customer, whatever that might mean based on my website, and then use distributed data management at the edge in place of caching, and then provide an intelligent way to create an application that would be running in this case with Fermyon and Akamai edge workers that can then delineate as somebody comes into our proxy, what should I serve? Should I serve something that's optimized for a search engine robot so that it's fast, so that it looks dynamic and personalized, and it gets me ranked well? Especially as retailers start dealing with zero-click searches with Google Gemini and the LLMs, that's going to be really important for their ranking. And then what they're thinking about is, as I create things like customer engagement videos, social media, advertising, etc., can I start to use AI to create more video content, more conversational content that will then be that will feed the LLMs with the legitimacy of my website for that zero-click search so that I'm getting surfaced more because it's going to be less about is somebody really researching through a bunch of blue links on Google. It's more what is going to be presented to them because the LLM decided that it was valuable. And that's sort of a jumping off point to a lot of other conversations that we're having. How do we think about that for payments? How do we think about that for content licensing and monetization? How do we want to think about it as we understand the intent of agents? But as people build the different front ends to the application that needs to make these decisions and then route accordingly on Akamai, that's where the flexibility of having Spin and Wasm on our platform with the Fermyon functions is really going to make a huge difference. And it all comes together across industries slightly differently, but at the end of the day, it's moving us from delivery of static content and optimizing networking to distribution of live applications and figuring out where inference needs to run.
When we talk about Akamai, we talk about security a lot. I just had a discussion with Rupesh, and then Steve also. A sorting report comes out. Security is kind of very, very important for Akamai, but also for WebAssembly. Can you talk about how does WebAssembly strengthen isolation and reduce attack surface at the edge? And what does this combination of Fermyon's technologies, you mentioned some projects as well, with combined with Akamai's security product unlock that was not available or that was not practical before?
And I'll start with the small part of the answer and start to move it, open it up, and then let Ari take the Akamai big piece of the answer. WebAssembly is cool because it's a secure runtime sort of by default. It was designed to run in the most attack-heavy surface that we've ever invented, the web browser, right? The web browser has to be resilient over all kinds of different attacks. And so the original engineers who wrote WebAssembly wrote it so that it would protect us, the web browser users, from any variety of malicious actors who were out there trying to steal data or manipulate what we saw or whatnot. And so from the very beginning, it was built with a tremendously strong security sandboxing layer, stronger, in fact, than the Docker sandboxing environment. And that was one of the initial attractors to us. Was, hey, we could take this environment that was built and battle hardened for the browser, pop it onto the server side, and immediately reap all the rewards of that kind of a security model. And so since the beginning, we've emphasized that as a way to provide a server side, cloud side, edge side runtime that will be able to execute user provided functions in a way that's resilient against attacks against WebAssembly itself, against the platform underneath it, against the developers who are building on top of it. And so we've carried that story on throughout, from Spin's early development on into Fermyon WASM functions. And then we plug it into Akamai's environment that has been security focused since the early 90s, before most people even understood what contemporary internet security was going to look like. That's where I should hand it off to Ari to talk there.
But there's synergies there. I mean, the way that we look at applying security is also in a layered fashion. And so what we've been working on is having a consistent set of capabilities across how you secure your application, which is, anything from your website to the APIs that you expose to moving forward, how you allow MCP connections into your data and your application environments. Then we've got workload protection, which is really important once you actually start connecting to backend services or other microservices. So if anything does come in through the front end of the application, we can try to contain or stop the spread of anything nefarious before it becomes a real problem that could result in, some sort of a news story that you don't like. And then we start thinking about access, because individuals need to access, the code. They need to be able to upload things to servers. They can make commits in GitHub, but they also are logging into third-party services as part of their day-to-day. Maybe they're doing coding on their favorite LLM platform. There's a lot of other things that we need to be monitoring as part of access in the environment. And so we try to kind of cover that and unify the signals from the application through the workload to the access. And then the last thing for us is the infrastructure. And whether you're on a public cloud or you're in your own colo or you've got a hybrid setup, we've been trying to provide the entirety of what a customer might need for that application, from the API that they expose all the way through to the servers that it runs on. And what we're finding is, a lot recently that's shown up in outages, in service disruptions on the internet, has been because of things like DNS vulnerability and misconfigurations. It's decidedly one of the least sexy things to talk about in the AI era, but it's such a fundamental thing that we still need for the internet to function. And so it's something where we've been trying to build as much automation into the process so the developers don't feel it, but they can rely on the fact that it's there, so that, as we go from, we don't believe that compute should be centralized, we think it should be distributed. Fermyon is helping to prove that with their platform, and also with the way that they're showing customers how easy it is to develop and launch applications. But we feel that doing that requires not to just be, a platform that is innovating and going fast, and forgetting that we have a duty to still provide that reliability and that stable backbone for people to develop on top of. Because at the end of the day, their customers and often a lot of other services rely on it. And so for us, it's important that it's as easy to use for developers as possible, but it always remains rock solid and reliable.
I also quickly want to talk about open source, because that is critical to Fermyon, and also Akamai is now investing heavily in open source. Of course, you have SpinCube. You're involved with Helm as well, Matt. Can you talk about what kind of investment engagement will be there post acquisition with these communities, or will it expand beyond those communities when it comes to next generation of serverless architectures?
Yeah, it was really important to us as we started Fermyon. And even, Swapnil, we've been talking now for over 4 years about this. It was so important to us to reach out to developers the way developers wanted, and accommodate what the developers were asking for, right? Developers, it's very important to them that they have open source tooling that they can use, because that gives them the freedom to see how it really works, to look underneath the hood. When they find errors, they can even help us fix them. They can add new features. And over even our 4-year history, we've seen such a huge volume of people becoming involved, whether it's fixing documentation application or help building new features or just giving us feedback into the roadmap. Hey, I looked at the code. Could it do this a little bit differently? And that's something that we've been strongly committed to. And it's a commitment that Akamai shares. So, about 8 months ago or so, we contributed Spin and SpinCube into the CNCF, which is the same foundation that does Helm and does Kubernetes and a whole bunch of other cloud native tools. And that is now an open governed project, but we have contributed to continue. We have continued to contribute to the CNCF projects since March when we initially made that announcement, and will continue to do so. So Spin and SpinCube continue to be focal points of what we need to do in order to realize the big vision of making serverless WebAssembly a thing that is accessible to every developer, that can unlock, again, that ability to write a new class of application. We also have worked a lot inside of the Bytecode Alliance. And when it comes to WebAssembly as a standard, WebAssembly is standardized by the W3, the same organization that standardizes HTML and cascading style sheets. And Bytecode Alliance is a group that authors specifications for WebAssembly and then authors the reference implementation. So it's an industry consortium, and we've been involved in that really almost since its founding. Even before Fermyon was a company, many of us were involved in that endeavor. And again, in this period of transition, we're going to continue to be involved in Bytecode Alliance and continue to work upstream. The biggest gamble that WebAssembly took, right, when the initial web developers at Mozilla and Microsoft and Google and Apple all got together and came up with the original WebAssembly specification, the biggest risk they took was that they needed the ecosystem, particularly the language, the different programming languages, to all buy in and support WebAssembly so that every compiler would be able to compile to it. Every scripting language would be able to run inside of it. And that continues to be a surprising success in my mind for WebAssembly, that it has garnered so much support. But it is the kind of relationship that requires continual nurturing. So we will continue to do our part in that in our new roles at Akamai. I'm very excited about that. Akamai already has a fantastic track record for open source development, as does Linode, which is now part of Akamai, and other organizations that are related as well. So we're really happy to just kind of drop in there and be able to continue on the trajectory we've been on for these last 4 and some years.
Well, I mean, Akamai is been committed to the CNCF through the way that we sponsor the community, the way that we go to the KubeCon events and try to engage with the developer community to help kind of understand how some of these trends are evolving and give access to technology, in an early sort of adopter fashion, like we've been doing with some of the ways that we've been coding towards the NVIDIA announcement that we made on our inference cloud. And so that's been, something that we wanted to continue. We've been pledging credits to make sure that we could support project scaling in areas that needed it. And we recently were excited to add the Linux kernel as well to the platform, and just make sure that we could ensure that it's got a home where, basically it can be secure, but it can be managed properly, and we can contribute back to the community and ensure that it remains that way. And so I think, it's an additive thing from an Akamai perspective, and we're hoping that we can actually get a little fluency and maybe improve the way that we can engage with the community by learning from the Fermyon team, because they have set some great examples. And it's something that with Matt coming in, we're actually pretty excited to start looking across our portfolio and seeing what else we might be able to do.
Now, if you look at this acquisition before it wraps up, it's like bringing two very strong engineering cultures, together. What does this combined roadmap look like for developers? Should they expect tighter tooling, new APIs, or kind of revolutionary changes in how edge functions are deployed and managed?
I think the most exciting thing, and this became evident very early in our partnership, but the most exciting thing is that we have had sort of the same vision for years. And it was one of those things where early on in the partnership, I would sit down with people from Akamai, or they'd seek out people from Fermyon, and we'd have these conversations that went like, this is where we see things going. Yeah, me too. I see it that way too. And I was thinking this. Yeah, that's kind of the way I was thinking it would go. And there was sort of this natural gelling of these two perspectives. And they really have come from very opposite directions, right? Ari mentioned earlier, Akamai has been all about delivery, and how do you get the bits to move faster on the network, and how do you do that more securely? And Fermyon, we started very much from a compute centric view of the world. How do I execute something faster? How do I accommodate the developers' needs to be able to write the kinds of code they wanted and then execute it in a heterogeneous set of environments? And yet we still found that we were sort of, gradually just converging onto a central way of looking at the future of cloud native, edge native, and the whole developing ecosystem of delivery and compute technologies. And, because of that, we each had unique things to bring to the story. Again, that was what I was always trying to capture when I would talk about us being the fastest serverless environment on the world's most distributed network. We were coming from different perspectives, but we had a common vision, and we each brought something together to the discussion. And Ari mentioned earlier, in order to unblock it, we got to this point where we said the only way we can really see this vision through is if we're doing it together. And so I think what Fermyon brings is this sort of like relentless devotion to building a really good developer experience, to making it fast and easy for developers to build these kinds of applications, and then to provide this kind of runtime substrate that works really well for developers. What Akamai brings is this mature delivery platform that's secure, and then this whole wealth of different services that are all available there for developers to take advantage of. So I'm looking forward to continuing on that vision, right? Making more and more of that vision public as we say, here's how developers can unlock a truly rich tool set to be able to build this kind of emerging form of edge native application.
I agree with the sentiment. Of course, I mean, it has been really fun to work with the team, and we have had moments like those. Even Matt and I were in Australia going to visit customers together, and we were sitting in the kitchen and had one of those conversations as well. Um, I think for us, when we look at the way that we're thinking about how developers are going to give way to builders with all of the AI tools that are coming available, with all of the intelligence that we can deploy, the way that models are getting to be lighter and more portable so we can run them without the heavy power needed and the heavy cooling needs that you require today in the centralized factories. There's a lot of really exciting development that's occurring in the space. And we're thinking about how do we take the technology and the critical infrastructure essentially for scaling AI and then start to make it easier to consume. Matt and his team are going to be a big part of that. And what we're doing with Fermyon and what we're doing with the WASM environment and platform, frankly, is just the beginning. We're really thinking about how do we bridge the gap between today, what's sort of a toy with vibe coding, but down the road, how you really think about we can start to develop AI agents in a real-time fashion based on business requirements with the right infrastructure underpinning them. If you look at what Akamai's been building from our core to edge infrastructure as a service capability, the edge functions that we've been talking about throughout this conversation, Matt mentioned our managed container service, how we're activating all of our global POPs, those 4,300 locations, making it possible to start shipping containerized applications across them and then managing them like we would typically manage any sort of a large streaming event, gaming event, something of that nature, but now an application, not the delivery of a live event. We see really a huge amount of potential in doing that, but it's first educating people on the fact that that's possible and showing some of the lighthouse customer examples of what people are achieving with the technology that we have right now. And then over the next year to 2 years, bringing forward more of these examples, but part and parcel, really working closely with developers to understand how they are going to want to build the applications of the future, because we know how they're building them today, but we don't want to continue doubling down on that as they're evolving so quickly. And that's where I'm really excited that we've brought in additional people from the CNCF community to work on the team together with us to inform us more from the open source community. We're also reinvesting in a developer advocacy function at Akamai and scaling that very quickly with industry veterans who have access to developers that are already giving us great feedback based on the announcement, both of the inference cloud and then of the acquisition of Fermyon and the partnership with that team. And so that's what really gets us excited, is that we're rekindling that innovative spirit that has defined Akamai for decades now as we start to go into this third scaling wave of AI with inference. And so as far as the roadmap is concerned, I'd say just, keep your eye on social media and you'll see it soon enough.
Ari, Matt, thank you for joining me and breaking this down. It is clear that combining WebAssembly-based serverless with a global edge network isn't just an incremental improvement. It has the potential to reshape how developers think about scale, performance, and AI workloads at the edge. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to chatting with you folks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those watching, if you are exploring next generation application architectures or pushing AI closer to your users, make sure to check out what Akamai is building with Fermyon. And don't forget to subscribe to TFR, like this video, and share it with your team. Thanks for watching.